Okay, kids, I'm gonna make a life-size cutout of the Sanderson Sisters. I think that's who it is, right? That's the women from the Witch movie? I don't know. Now, this is big. It's like 6 feet tall, and it's probably close to 8 feet wide. So we're gonna use some thin plywood. You know, it'd be better to do thicker stuff because this ain't gonna blow around the wind. But you know what? It's like almost 30 bucks a sheet for this thin stuff. So we're gonna use this. I got some scrap wood we can use to support it in the back, but we got a bunch of paper here. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Ideally, what you would do is to take the file to a print shop and print this out in one big sheet or maybe two big sheets, but you know, sometimes you don't have that option. So what I have are 80 sheets of paper. All of them have these little numbers here. They're printed out like a grid. So we're gonna lay these out, I think, and tape them together until I've basically got one big sheet. And then we'll glue it down with some spray adhesive, I think. This is gonna take more than one sheet of plywood. So I think what I'm gonna do here is start with one row at the bottom. Get that lined up, tape it together, and then go from there. This is going to take all day. Probably be good to give a little disclaimer here. You know, if you're pathologically, neurotically meticulous, this is a good way to lose your mind. It broke what was left of me. So I'm just lining up this first row here. There's really not much on it, but I needed it to get the subsequent rows lined up. And another thing came along with using these multiple sheets like this. I had to trim off the top of each row so that it wasn't overlapping the line on the next row. You'll see here this straight edge and a little X-Acto blade. I'm trimming those off. Just another complication to the process. It's good times. All right, I highly recommend it. I got some company here checking out the arts and crafts. All right, we got 2 more rows of these to do, but you can kind of see the shape coming out there. This is supposed to be about 6 feet tall, so we're off a couple feet here. So we need to rip down another piece of plywood, and we'll just kind of butt it up against this, temporarily secure it with some tape, and then we'll lay the rest of these out, kind of cut it down the line there, and then we'll cut them as 2 pieces. And you know, this probably ought to be cut in another piece, but we'll see. This is going to be pretty flimsy, I think, so we're going to have to do some work to stiffen it up a little bit. We'll see how this turns out. You know, maybe we can make lines here. We'll see how the heads come together up there. Kind of make it a 3-part thing. Let's rip this down. Well, as is customary, I really have no idea what I'm doing here. I need to glue this big sheet that we've made out of 80 little sheets down to this board so we can cut it off. You could probably tape it down, but you can see there's a lot of different little separate details and parts that I really don't just want flopping around. And this is probably not going to stay put if it's just taped. It's going to make some more work for us having to peel it off later, but I think this is going to be the easiest way to cut these things out. So my plan is we're going to pull this back. I've got it clamped down about halfway or middle ways. We'll just fold it back like this. Maybe. And then we'll just spray the adhesive down and roll it back into place. And maybe we'll get lucky and this will stick. And then we'll kind of reverse that operation for the other side. You know, once this is secure and dry, we'll flip the other side over, do the same thing. We'll see. Fumes of this are probably going to kill me in this enclosed space. So let's see. All right, feels tacky. Shouldn't have to wait. Let's see how this goes. Oh no. That was almost a disaster. Now, this isn't going to be perfect, but it doesn't need to be. All right. Where's my ruler at? Ah, there it is. Oh, fuck. Shit. All right, this is not working out. Alright, we'll give this a few minutes to dry. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect again. It just, I want it to stick while I run the saw around it, because this is probably going to take 7,000 or 8,000 years to cut out. I am probably going to divide this up into 3 pieces though. So kind of get a straight line here, so we can make them butt up against each other if that's the way they want to display it, and then separate them out into individual pieces. It'll make my life infinitely easier. So on the bigger pieces, we had to use a jigsaw to work around these details. Really wasn't terrible. A few areas that were a little bit of a pain. And then on the smaller sections, the heads that we had already cut off, I was able to take those over to the scroll saw, which made things a little easier. Still broke my neck, but it was easier. We got a menagerie of some random 1x material glued up, screwed up, clamped up, all in the interest of trying to reinforce this and give it a little heft. Nothing special here, just a whole bunch of clamps and glue. And this is where the joints are for the 2 pieces. So I'm kind of reinforcing those with these cross pieces. I do have one of them glued up already. Still laying here. Yeah, that's what it's supposed to look like. You get the idea. I'll show you when we get these others done. You can see back here we got this paper off pretty easy. Basically all I did was mix up a little bit of like 90% rubbing alcohol and some distilled water and just kind of spritz this with it. Just do it enough to let this soak through the paper. And you'll see it kind of turn transparent. Let it sit for like, I don't know, a minute, if that. And then it just kind of peels right off. I mean, some of the edges where the tape are at, you got a double spray once you pull the tape off. But this is way easier than I thought it was going to be. Just took a few minutes to soak this and then take them all off. You know, and wipe the excess off. You don't want to let this wood soak. It's probably going to warp it as it dries if you get it too wet. But this is working pretty good. It's really not all that satisfying. It's not going to come off in one big sheet because of the way it's taped. And that's really about all it takes. We'll give it a minute or two. Yeah, you just kind of peel it off. The edges where the tape are at, you know, they're not soaking this up very well, so you kind of got to spray those again. I did pull the tape off first on this one, but it just tore into a whole bunch of other little pieces that took longer to come off. So it's easier, I think, to pull some of these sections off first before you pull the tape. And then it also gives the tape some time to loosen up. As you can see, that comes off pretty easy. There you have it. If you find yourself in a situation for some reason that you need to take a paper template off of some wood you glued it to, you can use rubbing alcohol and distilled water, but it's probably best to just not find yourself in that situation. got the bases on and we're done for our part. Thank God. These will get painted and hopefully covered in some urethane.